The swinging 60s had swung, and now everyone was grooving into the 70s. The hair was longer, and the tempers were shorter. Freshman Debbie Salazar was right in the middle of it all. The campus near Silver Lake was on fire. Between the plumes of smoke erupting sporadically amongst the student body in the courtyard, Debbie could see clumps of young women with flyers standing at booths along the well-beaten pathways. Pamphlets were strewn across tables. Pens were tossed around and shoved into the hands of potential new members of various organizations. It was like a feeding frenzy. She was nervous as always, but there was something about that autumn breeze that invigorated Debbie's senses, gave her confidence, made her brave. And she could almost hear her mom's voice in her head as she made her way to the start of the next chapter in her life. A life that was finally hers. "You're just a late bloomer, that's all," Debbie's adoptive mother would say. "You'll come into your own." She was shorter than average, mousy in appearance and demeanor, and found it difficult to make friends. Maybe somewhere deep down she really wanted to face her fears, to be the master of her destiny, to show the world who she really was, who she could be, to feel like more than some sort of leeching monster, to take her shame and transform it into something beautiful. Maybe she just wanted to belong. Debbie never wanted to be a loner, but it seemed the universe insisted upon it. Maybe college would change that. The first booth was warm and welcoming, as to be expected, being the first table from the entrance. The pretty young woman asked Debbie a few questions about her major and what her hometown was like. Nothing too intrusive or deep. By the end of her spiel, Debbie felt so obligated to sign up that she couldn't see a way out of filling out the form while offering her worn-out people-pleasing smile. Handing the clipboard back felt more of a blatant admission that she couldn't say no, rather than a gesture of enthusiasm. But it wasn't too bad, Debbie thought, and the next one would be just as easy. By the time she reached the end of the row, she felt confident. She felt social. She felt seen. The Alpha Zeta Alpha sorority sisters didn't offer the same ear-to-ear, mindless grin the others had. It wasn't until Debbie locked eyes with them that she realized just how phony the other girls had been. Of the three sisters standing before her, the one in the center seemed to be the leader. She slid one corner of her mouth up the side of her face and offered her hand. "I'm the president of Alpha Zeta Alpha. I'm Brenda." Debbie intuitively shook her hand, almost dutifully, and introduced herself as well. "Nice to meet you, I'm Debbie." Moving on swiftly, Brenda began her line of questioning, which felt a bit more like an interrogation. "So, Debbie, where are you from?" Brenda asked flatly. "I'm from Iowa," Debbie announced, very rehearsed. "What's in Iowa?" Brenda asked, slightly tilting her head to the side, expression unchanged. My parents?" Debbie giggles nervously. Unaffected by Debbie's humor, Brenda presses, "And who are they? Anyone we would know?" Brenda leaned in a bit as the riotous noise started to escalate around them. "No, I guess not." "Well, Debbie from Iowa, are you interested in joining our organization?" "Well, sure, I think. Anything I should know about you?" Debbie prodded meekly. "We are all that there is to know around here," Brenda said, her lips now evenly curled up, her unblinking eyes locked onto Debbie's. Debbie shrugged, intimidated. "Oh, okay." Kate, the vice president, slid a clipboard into Debbie's peripheral view. It had a single sheet of paper and a single question written on it. "Who are you?" Genuinely confused, Debbie gently took the clipboard. The other sister, Tanya the treasurer, hands her a beautiful and weighted retractable ballpoint pen. "Oh yes, thank you." Debbie grips the pen and clicks the top. She feels a sharp pinch in her thumb which caused the pen to slip from her hand and onto the table. She inspects her finger and finds a bright red bulb emerging from it. "Oh no, are you okay?" Kate asks. Debbie, embarrassed, shakes it off and picks the pen back up. "Oh yes, just pricked myself somehow. I'm sorry." Back to the task at hand, Debbie refocuses herself on the question, "Who are you?" She couldn't help but feel the eyes of all three sisters scanning her, boring into her. What would the clever answer be, she thought. She scribbled on the sheet with the pen and looked it over a few times before returning everything back to Tanya. "That should be all, little Debbie," Brenda quips. The house leaders stifled their chortles and waved her goodbye. Feeling utterly dismissed, and her thumb now starting to throb, she smiled befuddled and slinked back into herself and walks away, regressing all the way back to how she arrived on campus that morning. Back at the table, Brenda bends over the clipboard to read what was written. She sees the neatly printed words, "I am an Alpha Zeta Alpha." College life wasn't at all what Debbie had hoped for. Loud parties at night in the dorms, complete with screeching, crying, and terrible singing at all hours of the night. Luckily, she was an insomniac and didn't need to sleep just yet. Her roommate assured her it would all calm down once the first term papers were coming due. At least there was rush week to look forward to. Perhaps then she would find the perfect home, a group of girls that truly wanted her to be there and respected her boundaries, appreciated her talents. God, how she wanted to be wanted. But Greek life, it would seem, was also not at all what Debbie had in mind. She awoke to 3 sheets of folded paper slipped under her door, each from a separate sorority explaining that she wouldn't be meeting with them at their colonial mansion homes. They declined to bid on her sisterhood. The hand-typed letters even went as far as to give reasons why. One said they weren't confident Debbie could afford the dues each semester. Another simply said, "left-handed." The last letter had something typed, but it was scribbled out with a permanent marker. Debbie was mortified. The initial heartbreaking blow lasted only a few minutes before she realized there was still one house that was holding out. Alpha Zeta Alpha. That night, while cramming for her first test in the blissful, miraculous silence of the hall, she hears the wispy swipe of paper sliding under her door. Half startled and half bewildered, Debbie rushes to swing open the door and catch the courier, only to find absolutely no one in the hallway. Not a hint of a human soul was to be found. But she did experience a strange aroma, like wet leaves, sweat, and mud, though no one left any footsteps. Sliding back into her room and closing the door, Debbie picked up the blood-red note and unfolded it. This one was handwritten in beautiful calligraphy. It was from Alpha Zeta Alpha. They accepted her bid for sisterhood and wanted to meet with her at their home on the outskirts of campus the next night. The instructions were short, but concise. Wear very comfortable shoes. Debbie could barely sleep that night. She hadn't felt this excited since she was a little girl waiting for dawn to break on Christmas mornings. What might be waiting at the Alpha Zeta Alpha house? She had seen a few door chants from afar that week, attended by all the right-handed elite freshmen lucky enough to get an invitation. She imagined what that might be like. Approaching the Alpha's residence tomorrow night and hearing their crisp, syncopated, melodic shouts welcoming her into their domain, into their fold on campus. Comfortable shoes wouldn't be a problem for Debbie, but she wondered what else she should expect. Rumors might as well have been facts on campus when it came to the Alphas. While it was true they were among the most excellent academically, they were also incredibly talented athletically. They were the most tight-knit, which isn't particularly shocking because all the sisters are said to be legacy members. They seemed to be absolutely superior. So how could Debbie have made the cut? She lied half awake in her bed, preparing for anything, including a practical joke. The sun had just converged with the horizon the next day. Debbie stepped off the campus bus in her comfortable shoes and made her way up the overgrown trail leading to the Alpha Zeta Alpha house. The mansion was situated by the lake. She wondered whether the house or the lake existed first, although from afar, the home looked so much taller and much older than she thought it would be. Curtained windows punctured the front and sides of the brick home, with a beautiful red door accenting the face of it. She could already see and smell the gigantic torches illuminating the threshold on the porch, but it was eerily quiet. Besides the rustling in the auburn leaves of the trees that flanked the front of the home, there wasn't a creature stirring. She scanned the property line for any signs of life. Was she at the wrong address? Suddenly, a loud crack split the air. Debbie's eyes spun to the front of the mansion to locate the source of the sound. The door was now wide open. A void of black has now taken the place of the once closed cherry-red door. Another deafening clap burst from the doorway of Alpha Zeta Alpha. Debbie was frozen in place, the fall wind running through her having nothing to do with the chills she was feeling across her shoulders. Her eyes were transfixed on the doorframe, which felt more like a portal now. The crackling claps were now coming in shorter bursts and a bit softer after each one. By the time Debbie decided to proceed and step closer, the syncopated claps were now crisp and almost cheery. As Debbie reached the first of the 4 steps leading up to the door, warming between the large torches, the void finally releases its first soul. A black-cloaked figure seemingly glides out of the home and stood before her in silence. 6 more similarly cloaked figures float through the door, and they all pose as pillars with their hands and fingers formed into circles stretched up above them. The awkward silence became unbearable after nearly a minute of Debbie standing there and them assumingly staring back. "Deborah Ann Salazar," the center figure proclaimed into the dusking day. It startled Debbie, and she took a step back defensively. "Yes?" Debbie answered back quickly. "Have you come to the House of Alpha Zeta Alpha of your own volition, seeking a bid to join our esteemed sisterhood?" The center figure inquests. The 6 figures lower their hands and chorus with a single clap. Yes, I have." Debbie stammers but affirms. "Are you willing to pledge yourself to the sisterhood and serve your sisters, your elders, and your high alpha?" With this, the figure spreads out her arms and presents herself as the high alpha. I don't know. Debbie feels this is a lot at once, and she wishes she had really thought this through before taking the bus all the way out to the middle of nowhere. "You must decide tonight. You must make your choice. Won't you come inside? We can make you more comfortable. Get to know each other better." All the cloaked forms sway to either side, creating a path into the darkened home. Debbie is nearly hyperventilating. The bright torches beside her seem to somehow be dimming as her chest tightened. The high alpha, recognizing her discomfort and borderline terror, removes her hood, draping it slowly and softly down the back of her shoulders. It's Brenda, the president. Though Debbie hadn't seen her in a few days, she couldn't mistake her, even in the rising moonlight. "Don't worry, little Debbie, you're exactly where you should be." Brenda extends her hand towards Debbie. For the first time, Debbie resists the urge to please and oblige. "I just don't know if I can do this," Debbie admits sorely. Brenda's eyes flicker in the torchlight. Though regret smears her face, Brenda is determined to captivate Debbie's curiosity and inspire loyalty in her as their sole prospect. Brenda says bluntly, but with unrecognizable warmth, "The truth is, Debbie, we need you." "You guys don't even know anything about me," Debbie says, refusing her patronizing tone. Another cloak descends the stairs towards Debbie, who instinctively puts distance between them. "We know who you are, who you really are, and so do you," the figure says. They too remove their hood to reveal Tanya's face beneath it. "Sorry about the pen, by the way. We just had to be sure." She smiles darkly at her. Sweat has now started to bead and erupt from pores all over Debbie's body. She wipes her upper lip and laughs nervously before saying, "Okay, look. I'm going to just leave. This is just too weird for me. Thank you for considering me for your sorority, but I don't think this is for me." Debbie turns and makes her way down the trail, praying that they don't follow her home or release a hound or two. As soon as she enters the vast waist-length fields surrounding the path, she hears a voice echoing from the porch. "You're not really Deborah Salazar, are you?" Brenda's words crashed upon Debbie like ice-cold sand. Her heart stopped, as if the lights went out inside. She stood petrified in the field. What did they know? How could they know it? She twisted her head behind her as she regained her faculties. She called back helplessly, "I don't know what you're talking about, sorry." "If you stay with us tonight," Brenda calls into the darkening landscape with resolution, "we'll tell you the truth, your truth, our truth." She didn't know why, but Debbie just couldn't take one more step. Instead of the fear and the urge to run away from danger as she always did, Debbie felt something she didn't often feel in life: rage. She didn't appreciate the situation for whatever it was. She couldn't appreciate being invited into the middle of nowhere by strangers in a strange house, in a town she'd never lived in, because she knew she didn't know how to say no. They must have already known that about her. They must have smelled it on her. How could she contend with their upper hands? But her curiosity did get the better of her, and it was growing cold outside. Debbie twisted around to face Brenda, who was patiently waiting with that smarmy, tilted head of hers. She again offered her hand to Debbie. "Hope you like fondue." The inside of the house was absolutely stunning. Not one item was out of place. It was as if no one even lived there. But there were definite signs of residency. Candid photos, ribbons, and certifications lined the walls as if they were wallpaper. A gurgling pot of chocolate fondue added to the aroma of incense and roasting venison. An older woman, whom they affectionately referred to as an elder, carefully pulled the pan of perfectly crisped meat from the oven. Only flashes of her could be seen through the slightly open kitchen door. Lit candles danced and swayed along the baseboards of the living room. Debbie was sitting on the couch, in between two women she hadn't met yet. They both offered the same unsettling grin on their face, and eye contact that pierced through her skull. "I'm Tina," one of them said flatly. The other introduced herself as well. "I'm Audrey." "Okay, nice to meet you," Debbie said awkwardly through an unstable smile under upturned, frightened eyebrows. "It's pretty neat that we finally found another legacy," Tina says quietly. "And don't worry, I ran late too." Before Debbie could make heads or tails of the comment, Brenda and Kate, now disrobed and wearing gorgeous cocktail dresses with matching high heels, saunter into the living room. Brenda forewarns their new potential member. "We just want to ask you a few questions, to get to know you a little bit better. But if you feel like you need to go, or if you find we're not the right sorority for you, you're always free to leave." Brenda nods her head hypnotically towards Debbie, who nods back, hypnotized by Brenda. "Okay," Debbie says. Brenda continues, "We know this is one of the most important decisions you'll ever make in your life, and we want you to feel comfortable, safe, and confident when you're with us, Debbie." "Okay," Debbie responds. Kate instructs Tina and Audrey to turn off the powered lights, leaving only soft candle glow. Debbie gulps and scans the room for some kind of hint as to what she should be doing or feeling. Sitting still just didn't agree with her senses in that moment. She wrung her hands together and folded her arms, trying to cope and assimilate to this overstimulating party. "Now we need you to trust us one last time. Close your eyes," Kate tells Debbie. "We're going to blindfold you and take you to another room now." Tanya seemingly manifests from the hallway holding a thick black blindfold in her hand and wearing that same sick smile. Debbie realizes there's a good chance she may not make it home to her dorm room that night, but she knew from experience that the best course of action in these situations was to be as non-combative and as charming as possible. She nodded in agreement. Tanya asked Debbie to stand and gently blindfolded her, softly patting her shoulders when she was done. Debbie can hear the girls in the room snigger and giggle, and a warm hand grabs her unexpectedly. Debbie jolts. "It's okay, little Debbie, it's just me." Brenda's voice had slowly turned into an emotional navigation beacon for Debbie. She tightened her grip around Brenda's hand as she was carefully led down the hall and through a doorway. Brenda beckons her down a chilly stone staircase. Step down slowly. It gets a bit twisted as it goes. The first steps down the stairs were quite shallow, but then became deeper and further down over time. But Brenda held and supported Debbie's hand anytime she struggled to find the next step. Debbie braced against the stone walls of the stairwell, which felt ancient and smooth. The temperature of the passage continued to cool dramatically. She thought it was just a figment of her imagination, but she could swear she heard singing, a siren-like call coming from below her. Over time, every step down towards their destination energized Debbie. She felt she was past the point of no return, but the further away she got from her past, even just in these short increments, the lighter and stronger she felt. She could almost feel a weight being lifted from her chest. All the anxieties and uncertainty suddenly vanished. The melodic chants and singing now swelled as she reached the final step. Though she'd been blindfolded during the descent, her other senses elevated, and she was aware of the now familiar carbon smell of the torches lit in the room, the warmth on her icened skin, the sounds of the shuffling fabric of robed women singing together in unison, and the taste of freedom from her now estranged life lingering on her tongue. No matter what happened from this point forward, somehow she would never be the same. Brenda led her to what felt like the center of the room. The singing finally stopped, and it was now silent. Debbie drew in a deep breath and exhaled. Deborah Salazar. A voice from somewhere in the room pierced the silence. Yes, Debbie answered, shocked at her own calmness. I am Sandra Klein, the eldest sister of Alpha Zeta Alpha. I just have a few questions before we can begin. Begin what exactly? Debbie asked sternly. Sandra replied swiftly, the ritual of intent. Before we can consider you as a sister, we must be certain of your legacy. I don't know what that means, Debbie insisted. The first question is, Sandra continued, who are you? Debbie, her hidden eyes searching for an honest answer under the blindfold, finally admits, I'm not sure. She resists the urge to shrug defensively. Why are you here? Sandra's tone deepens closer to the grave. Debbie stalls, feeling the release of Brenda's hand from hers. Why are you here, Deborah? Sandra reiterates. Debbie attempts to flatter the group. Because I want to be a part of something special. Deborah, I'll ask you one last time. Why are you here? Debbie's head dips into her chest and her shoulders sink down her spine. Why was she there after all? Was this just another instance of her looking for attention, trying to feel special and important, evading abandonment? The silence of the crowd and the stillness of the moment allowed Debbie to connect her heart to her mind and her mind to her soul. Because I'm alone. I'm alone. All the time. And I don't want to feel alone anymore. She felt her eyebrows twist underneath her forehead, her lungs lunging for air in a basement chamber that seemed to be shrinking by the second. I just don't know who I am, or what I want, or why I even deserve to... Debbie bites her lip to punish her mouth for nearly speaking the truth. To what, Deborah? Sandra insists. I don't want to say it. Debbie resists. Without her sight, Debbie's defensiveness and vulnerability overtake her, and she spurts out loudly yet comfortably calm for all to hear. You all think you're so perfect, don't you? You're smart and beautiful, strong, and everyone, quite frankly, is scared of you. Isn't that true? Isn't that who you are? Isn't that why you're all here? To play dress up and let everyone think you're just so far out? Well, I'm not scared of you. I'm done being scared of anyone anymore. So I guess I'm just here to tell you that. Is that good enough for you, Sandra? Hello? Debbie called out sarcastically, the adrenaline plummeting and exhaustion taking its place in her body. It'll do, Deborah, Sandra says quietly. I just have one last question to ask you. Debbie shrugs and gestures an openness to continue. How long have you known you're a legacy? A legacy? Debbie says, exasperated. Yes. When did you first find out? I don't know what you mean by legacy. Certainly your mother must have told you. Why else would you want to pledge for Alpha Zeta Alpha? She's adopted, Elder, Brenda interjects. Sandra is silent. Finally, she postures to Debbie. But darling, you must know what you are. Sandra pleads almost jokingly. What do you mean? Debbie says. Your blood, taken from the pen in the courtyard. You're a legacy. Wait, what does my birth mother have to do with this? Debbie starts to connect the dots. Do you know something about her? Who she was? Did she go to college here? Darling, Sandra starts. You're one of us. And what are you? Debbie pleads. We're alphas. We're the apex. Heart-eating beasts. Just like you. Just like your mother. Debbie could hear Sandra's voice swirling around her as she came to grips with the words she was saying. Debbie slowly reaches for the blindfold, but Brenda quickly grabs and lowers them, restraining her now. How long have you felt different, Debbie? Sandra inquires. Different how? Debbie continues to wriggle against Brenda's grip. Oh, come on. We can smell it on you, little one. We can see the glint in your eye, however faint. We can hear the blood coursing through you. If you don't feel it now, you won't. And it will make what must happen next all the more challenging for you. Just tell me what you want me to do or say, and I'll do it, Debbie begs. Who was your mother? Sandra digs. I don't know. Debbie twists under the pressure. They just told me she was put away. Put away, you say? Sandra asks aghast. I was born in a mental institution somewhere, and my mother and father adopted me. An institution? Sandra almost laughs. Why? Because... Debbie starts, but her shame chokes her. Because why? Sandra's voice gravels. Meekly, Debbie stops fighting against Brenda's constriction. She allows the blindfold to soak her wet lashes and catches her breath. She's ready to tell her truth, even if it comes out in a whisper. Because she killed someone, Debbie admits. They found her and found what she did in the woods, and they just locked her away. She said it was self-defense, but it didn't matter. They said she was crazy. A while later, I was born, and... Debbie could barely breathe, but found enough air to confess. She died having me. I never got to meet her. A hush enveloped the room. All that could be heard were Debbie's sniffles. The combusting of the torches kept track of the time Debbie felt she was losing in that moment. But then she felt the increasingly familiar hand of Brenda clutching hers as she sucked back salty tears. This somehow gave her permission to take a deep breath and find her footing on the chamber floor, in her perfectly prescribed comfortable shoes. She suddenly smelt the warm, earthy breath of Sandra standing right before her. She nearly whispered to her, Deborah, it's time to step into your final form, into who you are as a woman and who you are as a beast. I must ask you now, do you pledge to become one of the most impressive creatures that has ever walked the earth, and to do so as a loyal and faithful sister amongst the Alpha Zeta Alpha sorority? With vigor, Sandra iterates, do you pledge to protect and honor the pack for the rest of your days? This is absolutely crazy. Debbie chides through the lingering tears. Brenda whispers to her, laughing too. Just go with it, little Debbie. Sandra confirms, if there's one way to get close to your mother, it's through this family. We need you, Deborah. You've always belonged here, and we've always belonged to you. Debbie opens her nostrils and inhales as much air as she possibly can. There was only one thought that occupied her mind. How could she say no? Everything in her heart was telling her what she needed to do, and of all the times her intuition was wrong, it was never in times like these. Okay, I'll do it, Debbie says, nervously nodding her head vigorously. Then say the words, Deborah. Who are you? Sandra urges. Debbie takes a gulp and a striking amount of air into her lungs. I am an Alpha Zeta Alpha.